country station, AM 1360. We're glad you chose us. Thank you.
It's Impact with the Florida Star, the largest, oldest, and most read African-American newspaper in Northeast Florida and South Georgia. And now, here's the host, the publisher of the award-winning Florida Star, Clara McLaughlin.
Good evening, good evening. This is Opio, and you're tuned into Impact, the radio show that gives you the good information that you need to know to carry out the rest of your day and your week. Make sure that you know what's going on, community news and views. We got a great show lined up for you today. I want to make sure that you pick up a copy of the Florida Star newspaper. Been around since 1951 and still going strong with the leadership of Clara McLaughlin. Come out of Howard University, historical woman. There's a lot going on. There was a shooting that happened in Orlando, and just the carnage that we have seen out of that, we get to hear about. It's just horrible. Also, Vernell Jr., who was shot and killed by JSO officer Tylaer Landreville. The people are still up on the corner where he was shot on 9th and Liberty. Every single day since that happened. That is really interesting that you would have in Jacksonville. It's interesting that so many people are still out there and still out there every single day after Vernell Bing was shot by a JSO officer. Something has to be done about police brutality and the type of harm that has been done to African Americans. Somebody has to stand up for that, and the people out there are calling for the arrest of that officer. Again, we have the shooting. We're going to talk about that, the mass shooting in Orlando, right here in our state. And we just had Congresswoman Corinne Brown and Congressman Grayson actually on the ground making news on that issue and dealing with one of the issues that people continue to talk about is the assault ban weapon. All right. I'm hearing some gospel music in the background. I don't know if that's... Don't start me singing here now. I'll sing, and then y'all don't want no more of those songs played. Y'all be like, bring Opio in here so he can sing those songs. Yeah, y'all wouldn't want that. Y'all stop turning off your radio. All right, I believe we have our guest on. Congressman Grayson, are you on?
I am. I have to tell you, when I first ran for office in 2006, I made two promises to people. I've actually kept those promises. One promise was that I would never sing, and the other promise is that I would never dance. And I've been very faithful to those.
Well, how are you going to entertain and do the things you need to do? Because, black people, we love singing. We created some of the best music in this country, throughout history.
I agree. I've been in one or two black churches from time to time, maybe 10 or 12 or even 100. And I have to tell you, I did notice the joy and love in the room. Whatever it is the music, I see that. I feel it.
Right. Well, let me say how much I admire you. I'm just going to say that off the rip, and a lot of people don't hear me say that about a whole lot of politicians. Let me read a quote that you put out very recently. It says, "It's too late to save the 49 innocent people who died in Orlando yesterday, but it is not too late to save countless other lives if we act now." And this is a letter that you wrote to the Florida delegation dealing with what can be done to make sure that a shooter doesn't go in and able to do what this shooter had done in Orlando some days ago.
It seems almost incredible that one person can wreak that carnage. One person using one weapon killed almost 50 people in just a few minutes. You know, the police were on the scene almost immediately. There was actually an off-duty police officer who was right outside, and they stopped the firing as fast as they possibly could, yet there were 49 people left dead and 53 people injured. And it just shows you that even a person like that, a person of ordinary skills, can kill so many people so quickly with the right weapon, or should I say the wrong weapon, that we end up with the biggest mass shooting in the history of the United States.
Now, I want to ask you a little bit more about those things, but first, tell us who you are. Alan Grayson, Congressman Alan Grayson, who was running for U.S. Senate. Tell us who you are. Tell us your history.
Well, it's funny that you ask, because I hardly ever talk about myself. You know, I listen to other people who are running for office, they basically start to brag. They say, I did this, I did that, I did the other thing. You know, I've done some interesting things in my life. I raised 5 children. I got 3 degrees from Harvard. I prosecuted war profiteers in Iraq. I started a company that is the largest provider of international telephone services to Hispanics in America.
Wow.
I visited every country in the world, and I visited every state in the United States. So, yes, I've done a few things that are notable. I've even been to the North Pole and the South Pole. But I have to remind myself all the time, it's not about me. I grew up in the projects. I grew up very poor in the Bronx in New York. Lucky enough to get a scholarship to go to Harvard. When I was at Harvard, I cleaned toilets, and I worked as a night watchman on the midnight shift. And I had to make my rounds every night in the freezing cold outside 3 times every night, walking my rounds. I've been locked out of my apartment because my rent check bounced. I've had some hard times in life, but also some really, really good times. And I just want to do good for other people. Slate Magazine called me the most effective member of Congress. I'm the only member of Congress who raised most of his campaign funds from small contributors who came to our website, senatorwithguts.com, and give an average of $20.
Senatorwithguts.com.
Senatorwithguts.com. And I'm liberated to pass a huge number of amendments, more than anybody else in Congress, passed dozens of bills, because basically, I don't have to tell you this, you got your eyes open, everyone else is chasing those lobbyists and those PAC checks and that special interest sewer money and the billionaires and the multinational corporations. And I'm liberated from that because we have 125,000 people who contributed to my campaign, so I can actually concentrate on doing good things for people. And I think we've done some really important things. I'll tell you that what I'm concentrating on right now is expanding Medicare and expanding Social Security. Seniors deserve a raise. It's disturbing to me that there wasn't any cost of living adjustment this year, and it's equally disturbing to me that it seems like hardly anybody else wants to do anything about it. So I introduced a bill to give seniors a $400 increase on their Social Security.
Wow.
That's just the start. I introduced another bill to expand Medicare to cover your eyes, ears, and teeth. Just today I picked up another Republican on that bill, believe it or not. You know, they do have a reputation for being heartless creeps, but in fact, two of them did decide to join in my effort to make sure that Medicare covers every part of your skull. That bill is called the Seniors Have Eyes, Ears, and Teeth Act, because right now Medicare doesn't cover your eyes or ears or your teeth. And I've looked into it, and nobody knows why. But we've got 2.8 million blind seniors in the country, and they can't even get a $40 eye test. It is beyond a shame. It's criminal that we make this promise to seniors that we're going to take care of them when they're older, and then we walk away. So what I'm concentrating on more than other things right now, we do a lot of things. I've passed more than a dozen amendments in the last month alone. We do a lot of things in a lot of areas, but what I'm concentrating on in D.C. right now is trying to improve the lives of seniors. What I'm concentrating on back in Florida is something that you and I shared not too long ago. I'm really disturbed to see all of the, how should I put this, somewhere between negligence and malice that we see with the use of force by police against the African American community. I was moved to tears when you and I were together talking about the case of Vernell Bing, and he is not alone. I don't know if we had a chance to talk about it or not, but a 14-year-old African-American, Andrew Joseph III, was killed by police negligence in Tampa, or malice, depending on how you look at it, I guess. And once I found out about his case and got in touch with the local Black Lives Matter activists, I realized that there's so many cases like this out here. And you have to wonder, why can't we have a simple thing like an independent civilian review board going over cases of death or cases of other kinds of physical abuse? How hard would that be? Why do we have to rely upon the police to police themselves? That doesn't seem to make sense. There's an old saying, who shaves the Spanish barber? Barbers don't cut their own hair, so why do we have police policing themselves?
Right.
It just doesn't make any sense to people.
Now tell me,
I think they're right.
What does a senator, so you're going from Congress to the Senate. Tell me the difference between the two, and what would you say a senator does?
Well, right now, I'm doing my best to do good things for 700,000 people. Mm-hmm. And if I'm elected to the Senate, I'll be doing my best to do good things for almost 20 million.
Right.
One of the reasons why I've been able to do so much is what I said, which is that I'm unbought and unbossed, as Shirley Chisholm used to say.
That's right.
When she was in Congress. And another reason is that I've become a real master of how to get things done. Winning over majorities and coalitions, building coalitions, becoming a master of the rules of procedure. This is how you get to have passed more amendments than anyone else in Congress like I have. This is how you end up passing over 24 bills in less than 4 years. If I were able to do all this for people in Central Florida, I think of a lot of good that I can do in the Senate. And it's not just what I do in D.C. I mean, we've had a huge impact locally in Central Florida. I'll just give you a few examples. So we had, it was worse in Central Florida than in Jacksonville, but you had your share of this too. We had a huge slew of foreclosures here starting in 2006.
Right.
In fact, in the central county in my district, Osceola County, which is where Kissimmee is, half of all the homes have gone into foreclosure sometime in the last 10 years. Half. So it broke my heart to see that people couldn't even have a chance to talk it through with the bank. You call the 800 number, and they treat you like a criminal, or they'd hang up on you, or they'd take your number and never call you back.
Right.
So what I did was I went to our local judges here in Orlando, and I wrote out an order for them for mandatory mediation. Basically, it said the banks can't grab your house for 2 months, and during that 2-month period, they have to sit down with you and try to work it out. And a mediator would come in and be paid for by the bank, and like a miracle, suddenly foreclosures dropped in half. They went from $3,000 a month down to $1,500 a month. It's just...
My goodness. Wow. It looks like we dropped that call, but we got to go to a break anyway, and I think we're going to bring them back. Boy, how impressive is that? How impressive is that? Every now and then you find those politicians that are really busy and can get things done. Alan Grayson happens to be one of them. He's one of those old-style liberals that say they're going to do something. It's going to sound wacky to conservative, but they get it done, and seniors end up being happy, and you end up living in a better world as a result of them being around. That was Alan Grayson, and we're going to bring him back because I want to talk to him a little bit more about economics and the criminal justice system and voting. This is Opio. This is Impact. I will see you on the other side of the break.
Do you know what media received the first Eagle Award by the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office for being the most factual? The Florida Star. Do you know which media solely addresses issues of concern for African Americans? The Florida Star. Do you know which media carries local, state, national, and international news regarding African Americans? The Florida Star. Do you know the only media that carries a special section for our youth at home and the schedule for 3 black television networks? Now you know. The Florida Star. Northeast Florida's largest, oldest, and most read African-American newspaper, serving since 1951 in more than 200 locations. The Florida Star. News you can use. News you can trust. The people's choice. Striving to make a difference. Subscribe today. Call 766-8834. That's 766-8834. Pick up the Florida Star at over 200 locations, or to have it delivered, call 766-8834. The Florida Star, speaking truth to power.
Hello, this is Opio, and I am back, brought back Congressman Grayson. He had he had a piece that we put in the paper about some work he's done around how criminal justice actually relates to voting and voter disenfranchisement. And we're going to talk about that. I want to talk a little bit about economics as well. Sir, we got you back on?
Yes, I'm here.
All right. And for those of you who are listening, continue to pick up the copy of the Florida Star newspaper. We've been around since 1951. And right now, when we go into these stores, they are sold out. And so thank you so much. Also, Star TV. Over 300-some thousand potential listeners and viewers of that, but you have to continue to support us, or else we will go away. And you know we got some of the best programming on television. Now, tell us a little bit about the legislation that you're dealing with voter disenfranchisement that so many people had contacted us about that we put in the Florida Star newspaper.
Well, it's very simple. We created first-class citizens and second-class citizens, and the second-class citizens aren't allowed to vote. We have almost 2 million people here in Florida who have been convicted of a felony. They've served their time. They're back in the community. They've paid their debt to society, and yet we say they can't vote. Except we is we. We have a huge percentage of African Americans in Florida. 23% of all adult African Americans who are not allowed to vote because they're convicted felons. And there are only 3 states in the entire country that disqualify you permanently from voting if you're a convicted felon. It is basically a political power grab. It is
Right.
modern Jim Crow law.
You're right.
To say that one particular part of the community can't vote for whatever excuse you give. It used to be the poll tax.
Right.
Say if you didn't pay the poll tax, then you couldn't vote. Now they say if you've got a criminal record, you can't vote. The impact is the same. It disenfranchises African Americans in huge numbers, and voting is power. Everyone says that this is the ultimate 50-50 state, Florida. Well, it's only because they've taken 2 million people and said you can't vote. And of those 2 million people, about 100,000 of them are actually in prison. And all the rest are out of prison, served their time, in some cases 50 years ago, and they still can't vote.
Right.
So it's wrong, it's morally wrong, and in particular, it's discriminatory. It's discriminatory against the African American community. Now, I may be elected to the Senate this year, I may not be, but I'll tell you, win or lose, I'm going to fight to see that this gets on the ballot, and we have a constitutional amendment that restores the right to vote. So what I did in Congress is I wrote out that legislation to try to make it a model law that would apply to the whole country. I don't think that bill's going to pass tomorrow, but I think it gives people an idea, it plants a seed, and it lays the foundation for doing it right here in Florida, where we have literally the worst problem in the entire country regarding disenfranchisement of African American voters. There's no other place that's worse than that. We are number 1 in disenfranchisement of African American voters.
Now tell me about economics. We know that the biggest correlation to crime is poverty, right? It's almost nothing else unless you want to say gender. But what's your take on being willing or able to get small businesses, particularly because you have a lot of people that come out of prison, and that's big in the black community. They've used the criminal justice system just to jail and prison so many people. They get out, a lot of times they might have an entrepreneurial bend, but they end up having to go and because some qualifications, they have to go and get a job, and that might be at a McDonald's or Burger King. But there are not enough of those organizations that are saying, you know what, let's give them some money. Some of these were some geniuses when they were out on the streets. Let's give them some money. They have a business license. Let's give them some money so they can actually create jobs, not only ex-offenders, but in poor communities, in general. What's your take on economics and stimulating communities with funds so people can work and also job training where they can increase their income?
Well, one thing we have to try to do is to keep the money in the community. And you're doing that right now. People listening to your show are learning to patronize your advertisers in the community. Excuse me, but I didn't hear any ads on your show for Microsoft or for Google or for General Motors. What people are hearing by listening to your show is they're hearing local markets. And the same thing is true with your newspaper. When people pick up your newspaper and pay for it, they're giving, they're participating economically in the local community. And then when they go look at the advertisers in your newspaper, they're learning about how they can spend their money locally.
Right.
How you spend your money is a choice. And you can spend it by go to McDonald's and make Ray Kroc's family rich. Or you can spend it and go to a local kit and get some good food, some locally made food, and give your money to somebody local who's going to turn around and spend it on the rent, and then the landlord's going to turn around and spend it on the beauty parlor, and then the beauty parlor is going to turn around, and so on and so on and so on. So one thing people need to do is to think, how do we spend our money locally, and that lifts up the whole community.
Right. Okay, so what has been in your run, and when you run statewide, what has been some of the things that you've seen since you've been out there running around the state for Senate?
Well, one thing I've seen is that there are some problems that seem to be completely, universal. We were just talking about one earlier, the fact that the police sometimes do things that are tragic, and all over the state, it's very difficult to get any sort of justice or accountability. Your case that we were discussing before in Jacksonville. In the case I mentioned, the Andrew Joseph case in Tampa, the parents, Andrew Sr. and Deanna, they haven't even gotten a police report for their son's death. They haven't gotten a police report. It's been 2 years. They haven't gotten a police report. They had to go and file a lawsuit to have any hope to get the details of how their son died. 14-year-old boy.
Right.
So, and we've had cases like that in Orlando. We've got, there was an African American who took, I think, more than 50 shots from the police. Usually 2 or 3 is enough. They buried him with 50 bullets.
Wow.
As I go around the state, I see that there are enormous disparities and huge discrimination against African Americans and Hispanics. I mentioned some of them when you and I were together. How many whites have a college degree? 29%. How many African Americans have a college degree? 18%. What is the average household income for whites? $57,000. What is the average household income for blacks? $37,000. And what you were talking about before, the fact that it is so hard for convicted felons ever to get a break and to get a decent job. That's a good example of that in black and white. A $20,000 tax based upon the color of your skin. And you and I were talking about this when we were together. Even life expectancy, how long you live on this planet before you go and you meet your maker, is hugely different. A white male like me lives to 78 on the average. Black males live till 73. So they take 5 years out of your life if your skin is black.
Wow.
And this is a problem not just in Jacksonville or in Orlando or in Tampa, but everywhere all through the state. I don't see any place where it's any different. It's no place have I seen where we have people living in how should we put this, harmony. Everywhere there continues to be friction, and I want people to know that I've been the congressman for everybody, and I will be the senator for everybody.
All right, I'm gonna let you go. Tell us how we can get in contact with you, and if you can, real quick, when you go back to Washington, based on the shooting, what you got in mind?
Okay, two things. First, we have an organizer for our campaign in Jacksonville. With your permission, I'll have him get in touch with you. Maybe you can have him on the show. That's up to you, of course, but that would be a wonderful thing if you could have him on the show, or just spread his name around.
All right.
Secondly, I'm already working to solve this problem because the problem is very simple. It is too easy to kill too many people too quickly. That's the heart of the matter. When you can kill as many as almost 50 people in a matter of minutes with one weapon, it's just too easy. I don't know if you had a chance to listen to the video that somebody took that night before she died, but the video has been posted online. There were 17 shots in 5 seconds.
Wow.
Literally too fast to run away.
Right.
One of the victims had over a dozen bullet holes in him. So, the problem is that when we have weapons like that, any crazy person can do enormous damage. If the killer had been throwing rocks, it's safe to say he wouldn't have killed 50 people, almost 50 people. So what I want to do, first of all, is I want to go back to the ban on assault weapons that we had for 10 years from 1994 to 2004. That's number one. Number two is I want to make sure that when somebody's been on the terrorist watch list like this person was, the killer was, just the fact that he gets off the list doesn't mean he can go and buy anything he wants. I don't like to second guess people, but in this case, when the FBI saw that somebody who had been on the terrorist watch list, who was interviewed 3 times, went and bought an assault weapon, they should have said, what does he need an assault weapon for? I asked this question, and the answer came back, well, he's a security guard. How many security guards do you know with assault weapons?
Right.
So that's another thing. We've got to make sure that when they identify somebody as being dangerous, they stay on top of him when he does something like this that's very suspicious. Another thing is that we've got to make sure that everybody has a background check when they buy a gun. As it turned out, he bought a gun in the shop. Okay? So there was actually a record of him buying the gun. We have to make sure that anybody who buys a gun anywhere in the United States has a background check before they get the gun. And 90% of Americans see it that way. In fact, more than 80% of NRA members see it that way. But the system is so screwed up that it doesn't matter. You sometimes wonder why we even call ourselves a democracy when 90% of America wants something and it still isn't true.
Right.
So, it's just common sense stuff. Basically, we have to do a better job of keeping dangerous weapons out of the hands of evil people. It's that simple.
Congressman Alan Grayson, to give us your website.
SenatorWithGuts.com, the modestly named SenatorWithGuts.com.
Congressman Alan Grayson, thank you, sir. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for getting the word out to people. You are amazing. People can turn to you and get the good story every day.
Thank you, sir. All right, Joe, I got to get out of here. We will see you next time. Make sure you pick up a copy of the Florida Star newspaper. It comes out tomorrow. Got some really, really good stuff in there. This is Opio. I will see you next time on Impact.